Hey y'all, happy Wednesday. Welcome to another live stream in my group, Peaceful and Profitable Entrepreneurs. Today we are talking about 3 content strategies you can steal from my own 5-figure a month business. So yes, 5 figures every month. And really our growth has just blown up exponentially because of content. So that's why I'm such an advocate for talking about this, and why I'm so excited to share these content strategies with you and how I think about it. So when we jump in, I'll give you my 3 content strategies, and we are going to look at it through the lens of my framework: mindset, strategy, organize, implement, because I think there are, other than me sitting here and listing the 3 things for you and diving into each one, I think there's ways we can look at them through different lenses to really get more out of it and have a more beneficial conversation for you. But if you're here now watching the replay, please say hello. Give me your questions, give me your comments. I want to hear them. I really want this to be supportive for you. That's why I do this. I love this. I want you to book clients from this. I want you to just have mindset shifts and really have actionable takeaways. So be sure to let me know, reach out, even if it's months later. I want to get you the support you need with this conversation. So as a thank you, I always am just so grateful for y'all who are here live and who catch the replay, because I know we have a lot of replay people watching. But just as a thank you, if you leave a comment, leave an emoji, ask a question, you'll be entered to win a free giveaway, which is my Mastering Sales Post Masterclass. That's a mouthful. It's a low ticket item I have on my website, but I really want to give that to you as a thank you. This is the framework for writing sales posts that really connect and convert, because there's definitely kind of an art form to writing sales posts. I find a lot of people just kind of put a call to action at the bottom of something and call that a sales post, and that is not a sales post. So this freebie giveaway is literally to give you the framework to write a sales post that genuinely calls someone to take the next step with you. So that's our giveaway today. If you're here in the US, we just had Labor Day, so this is a short week. It's definitely felt like yesterday was Monday and Tuesday combined into one day. We had a big adventure in our house last night. Definitely got my adrenaline running. If you know me, I have 3 kids. They are 8, 6, and 4. It was bath time. My husband was up there with a couple of them, and all of a sudden he's yelling for me to get upstairs, and one daughter's screaming bloody murder, and I'm just booking it up the stairs oh my gosh, there's just gonna be blood everywhere. I don't know what's happening. And I get up there, and my oldest somehow swallowed a charm from the middle of a bath bomb. So I am giving her the Heimlich maneuver. She's screaming. It was a whole thing. But we got it out. We got it up because just I'm a nurse. I don't work as a nurse anymore, but I know a lot of things about what happens when things are inside your body that shouldn't be there. Back in my 20s, I had abdominal intestinal blockages that had to be removed. So my brain went to that, and what I went through and the surgery and the recovery period was terrible. So there I was doing the Heimlich with my daughter screaming. So that was our excitement this week, but we got it out. So I feel really good about that. But if you're jumping on, please say hi. Let me know, kind of what questions or just anything you have around content that is frustrating. I know so many people are overwhelmed by it and don't know what works. So we're going to jump in today, because a stat that I loved and that I always come back to is that 70% of consumers would rather hear about a company through content than ads. So that is so powerful. And I just know personally I'm the same way. If I see an ad pop up, I immediately skip over it. Whereas true, genuine content, I'm going to sit there and get value out of it and really want to be connected before I just, go buy something. So we're going to jump in. I'm going to share the 3 content strategies with you, and then we're going to unpack it and look at it through the lens of mindset, strategy, organize, implement. So 3 things is, your content is your inventory. Hi, Adrian. Thank you for joining. Thanks for saying hello. Welcome. Let me know your comments, questions, anything you have today. Your content is your inventory. The second thing is reusing and repurposing content. That's my second strategy. Third strategy is create a weekly framework and schedule to follow. So these are kind of all the things when I hop on a free call with someone, I really kind of want them to know this stuff, either up front or definitely we kind of get this stuff kind of out of the way. It's kind of basic foundational stuff to me. And then we can dive into the juicier pieces of it. So that's why I really want to go deep into all of these today so that you all have them. So obviously the first piece of my framework is mindset. And really how I think about content is just building relationships. That's all we're trying to do in business. So you want to think of it as opening the door to someone and building that relationship. I know so many people think of content as like a task on their list, something they need to check off on their to-do items, kind of this overwhelming thing they always have to do. And I really invite you to actually think of it as building a relationship. So every time you're doing a post, every time you're doing a sales post, value post, any kind of content, like really think about like, how am I building relationships with people? How is this deepening the connection for them to know, like, and trust me and figure out if this is the right fit or if I'm the right fit for them, or, you know, how do we build that relationship? So that's really the mindset I want you to have, is that like, it's not just a task on your to-do list. It's really building relationships with people. So that kind of makes everything feel a little easier when you can see the outcome that you want from it, instead of just being like this perpetual hamster wheel of, you know, content that I'm always creating. It's like I'm building relationships, and that's what this is for. So the second piece is thinking of content as an asset in my business. So I work with countless clients behind the scenes. We have service providers. We have people who have inventory on their shelves. And so for us service providers, content is our inventory. It's very much there as an asset. It's like the closest thing to inventory we have. And I really think of it as that exactly. So this is something that, you know, an asset is something in your business that serves you later on. So when people buy products or, you know, whatever that they sell in their business and that's their inventory, it's because they're going to go, you know, have it later on to work for them and make money for them. And so content is our asset. It is our inventory. So really treat it like that. And so we'll talk about that a little bit more in the organize and the strategy piece of that, but really thinking of like, this is my inventory. It's not something I just put out there on social media and it's gone, but like, this is mine and I get to use it and make it work for me over and over. So take that mindset, you know, don't just put it out there on social media, never use it again. Have it in your inventory, in your back pocket to use again and again. So a lot of people have a mindset issue with reusing posts. They're afraid someone will notice, like, you know, you don't want to wear the same outfit to school 2 days in a row, or, you know, whatever. I wear the same like 5 shirts every day, so I don't care, but I used to care about that stuff. And so it's kind of the same way with posts. People are always like, I'm scared to reuse something. What if someone notices? And my thing is always like, yes, that's fine if they notice. First of all, the percentage of people who are going to see it twice are very low. I pulled some numbers. So organic reach for Facebook is 5.5%, and organic reach on IG is 6 to 10%. So those aren't like super thrilling numbers, but it just shows you that like the fact that someone was in that, you know, percentage of people who saw your first post is very low. And then my thing is, if they did see it in, great. That probably means they need to buy from you because they're paying attention and they noticed. I like to think of it as like the books that I have on my bedside table. I have like 3 books that I rotate through all the time. I've got like some Wayne Dwyer books. I've got Leveraging the Universe. I just have all these great mindset books that are just like genuinely juicy, fill you up with great mindset pieces. And I'm always reading through them. And I get great takeaways on the 3rd, 4th, whatever read. And so think of your content like that. Like it gets more powerful as you reuse it because it might land with someone in a different way. Or maybe you tweak it a little bit based on what you've learned and it really reaches your audience and really speaks to them in a way that maybe it didn't the first time. So that's the other mindset piece about repurposing and reusing that I want you to think about, is that like people probably didn't see it the first time. And if they did, great. They're watching and they're probably getting something even better out of it. So that's my mindset piece around all that. So let me know if you have any questions. Adrian, if you have any takeaways, let me know your thoughts. But we'll move on to the strategy piece because I know that this is kind of like the juicier, meatier piece that like everyone is just like, give me the strategy. So here we go. I have 2 rules of thumb in my business. Nothing just ever goes in one place and nothing only gets used once. So those are my rules. They don't have to be your rules, but when I'm creating content, I'm really looking at like, how does this get to go into like so many other places and get reused and repurposed? So that's kind of what I want you to take away from that. Make your own rules if you want. They don't have to be mine, but that to me helps me make content easier to use and create and keep using. So Adrian says that all makes so much sense. Great. Thank you. I always love knowing that people are picking up what I'm laying down. So let me know if anything gets confusing or specific questions that come up. So I'm going to tell you a little bit of what we do in my business. Personally, you don't have to do any of this at all. I just want to give you a little perspective, and I'll kind of touch on what I see clients do behind the scenes, since I am so much in their business and their marketing strategy. So I store everything in Google Docs. I write like a week of posts on a Google Doc. I'll put certain videos or graphics or photos or whatever I want in that Google Doc. My VA, she's kind of OBM, and then she has a VA helping her, has a spreadsheet, and so they kind of pull that into their spreadsheet because they like it a certain way. When it's highlighted pink, that means it's scheduled, and so if we need to change anything, I just need to let her know. But we kind of have that spreadsheet that we always can come back to, so we've got like a year's worth of content there. I've started organizing it in buckets so I can quickly go back and look at, like, is this a mindset thing? Is this a sales thing? Like, kind of organizing it in that way, not just with the weeks. But that's literally kind of how we store it. I love using Google and shared drives for all this. I know of clients who use Airtable. I've heard people use, obviously we use Google Drive. I've heard of Dropbox, like whatever works for you, like just figure out a system that works. I talked to someone the other day that used a scheduling software, and she put everything in the software, and after it posted, it deleted it. And I was like, oh, you gotta go back and pull that and like put it somewhere. So there's not really like any perfect answer out there. I feel like everything kind of has its limitations. But I found Google Drive, just for me and the way my brain works, like I really like having it in a document, and then having kind of everything in folders. So like I said, I have the week's worth of posts. I typically will go back through the year to like the previous year and pull repurpose stuff, just because my content kind of goes with the flow of the year. Some other people might do with seasons, just kind of depending on your business. Like maybe you have offers that you do in the spring, or that you always roll out, around Black Friday or whatever. So you can kind of use that as your like gauge to pull, some of those resources. I've gotten to the point, I have so much content, y'all, it's a lot. I have so many ideas all the time. So what I've kind of done is just every week I repurpose 2 pieces of content and then pull in, new fresh content for the other ones. I'll kind of just take a look at the, repurposed content and double check it and give it a little lift, just especially based on all the conversations I have with business owners and my clients, and just really kind of tweak it a little bit so that, it speaks to people a little bit more and what I'm hearing and seeing. And so that's just kind of how I do my weekly content and repurpose it. So typically what happens is my content goes out to this Facebook group first, then it goes to IG, and then it's kind of repurposed to other Facebook groups. We also have a weekly newsletter, so we'll pull something from that week into the newsletter. And then this live stream also goes out there as a reminder, and then gets repurposed back with the newsletter for the week as, a recap of last week's live stream. So this live stream is going in multiple places. We're just kind of like putting different things everywhere. So the VA will kind of put dates on our spreadsheet of like, this post was in this group on this date, it was in this group on this date. I also just have extra content that I post on my Facebook profile that I've just started putting there, because like I just literally have so much of it coming out of my ears. So again, this is not stuff you have to do, but I would just say, like, know what your literally where it's going. Like, okay, it goes here first. That's kind of like our first touch point. Then it's getting repurposed here in this other place, and have like a system so that you know where it was posted, when it was last posted. I even started putting years on my dates, because when I was doing this, I was just like, oh, like 9/6. But really realizing like, oh, time like flies. And so now I'm like, okay, 9/6/23, because otherwise it's like kind of getting confusing. But that's how we organize it. I've got like Google folders, like content 2022, I've got content 2023, and then all the weeks within that. Let me know if you have any questions about like the strategy piece of that. So yours doesn't have to look like that. I just literally want to give you an idea of what ours looks like. It's very simple. It's, Google Docs, Google spreadsheets, like it's not anything crazy. It's just my OBM and I have gotten really clear on the flow and the sequence of it. And that was something I, for the most part, created before I hired her. That way I just had this system where I could just create a Loom video and just kind of catch her up on it. It wasn't like I was building the plane as we were flying it. Obviously, she brought in the spreadsheet that she likes to use and kind of put it all in one place. So that's actually helpful to see. So, think about in your business, if you're going to hire someone to help you, or eventually you want to just have that system in place so that like you can easily just be like, here you go, here's a Loom video, here's your access to all this, take it and run with it. Obviously, I like that I was open to the, spreadsheet that she had because it's been really helpful. But, also be open to someone else might have a new idea that we haven't thought of. So have that system in place and, have that flexibility to be like, hey, that's a really good idea. And I didn't see it from your perspective of how that would make things easier. So I think that's it about that. I also do Instagram stories. Sometimes those stories are just something that comes up on the fly, and then sometimes I'll take that and turn it into a live stream here. So each idea can turn into multiple, like maybe a post, maybe a story, maybe a live stream around it. So like I get to talk about it in multiple places in multiple ways. So like written would be different than me having this live stream, which is different from a story that I might do. So it's the same idea. It's not like I'm coming up with like a million ideas. I'm kind of just taking the same idea and tweaking it a little bit based on the platform. So I also invite you to plan out your ideas. So if you're new to content and creating ideas, so just literally first pick the platforms you're going to use, one, maybe two, and then pick the days you're going to post. Then decide from there, like, okay, if I'm posting 3 times a week, which day is the sales post? Which day are the value posts? Do I have a theme on certain days? Then your brain will fill in the gaps. Like if I'm doing a client example on Wednesdays, like your brain will fill in the gap for finding client examples. If you provide value on Mondays, like you'll keep thinking about like, okay, next week on Monday, I'm going to have a value post. Like, what am I talking about that's relevant to people now? So let your brain fill in those spots, but give it the framework first. So Adrian says, yeah, I need help building the plane. I mean, you're not alone. Like, this is something that I'm like, this is so, foundational, fundamental piece, but like, literally it's part of the overwhelm that people have with content, and creating it and putting out there is literally like, let's just figure out like the system first. Like it's like 1, 2, 3, let's do that. And then on top of that, we can keep adding and kind of stacking things. Because I love to just do simple better. I don't think anything needs to be crazy, it doesn't need to be complicated. So literally just, starting with those like framework of, this is how I'm writing posts and this is where I keep them. And then I know I'm posting on these days to these platforms, and then we're reposting it like this or repurposing it like this. So literally like just kind of to going through your content to know like how all that's happening can just really bring you a lot of peace and make things a lot easier. So let me know if you have any specifics around building the plane that you have questions about. I can tell you kind of what other clients are using. I'm a little bit more regimented than a lot of my clients, but we have worked to get clients like 2 weeks ahead of their content, and that's like a really big win. And so I'm kind of like, I don't really care what it looks like, but let's just somehow get there. So just knowing like what you're going to post on certain days, and your brain will find the ideas. Like our brain loves to fill in a question. It loves to answer a question. So if it knows like next week, I need these 3 ideas, it's going to be searching everywhere. It's like that reticular activating system, like what we focus on expands. So if you're looking for client data, client results, testimonials, wins, your process for doing things, like you're going to find it through the work that you do. Because I know everyone here is so heart-centered. They love what they do. They're so passionate and really wanting to support their people and their clients. And so I know that they have just a wealth of knowledge and just like, service to bring to the world. And so they're going to find it with their work, through the work that they're doing with their clients. So I know that it's there. It's just, you got to give your brain that little like reason to find it. So let it have a question, fill in that gap. I keep notes on my phone. I have like a note section with ideas. I keep voice memos. Sometimes I have to go back in and I have to like listen to my voice memos, and I'm like, wow, I totally forgot about that. What a great idea. I also, is this what I'm going to talk about? Let me pull up. I have a clipboard from when I was a nurse. This is my nursing clipboard, and I literally take my daughter's schoolwork because there's just tons of papers that come home. I have blank pieces of paper. I will write my ideas at the top of the paper, And then when I have a few minutes, or if I just feel really inspired, I'll take those ideas and just write, like hand to pen, pen to paper, you know, that sort of thing. Like sometimes on a Saturday morning, the kids are playing and they're just perfectly happy doing their own thing. So I'm like, yes, like I'll take my coffee out on the porch, I'll take my clipboard, and I'll just literally write, because maybe it's just my age, I don't know, writing helps me articulate my thoughts better. It helps, you know, when I get things down on paper, I just feel the creative juices flowing. It's easier to write. And then I can take that and like literally just quickly type it into my Word document. Whereas if I just pulled up a Word document, I'd be like, okay, I got this idea, but I don't know. My brain just, it's easier for me to like take the pen to paper. So I literally have this stack of stuff that I can type into my content when I have a hole to fill. But right now it's like, we're good. But I've got tons of ideas, and I think that that's just a great way to do it. You can do it obviously any other way, but just kind of when you have those pieces of inspiration, to be able to capture that is so helpful. And you still have the framework even if you don't feel inspired. So you still know Mondays you post this, Wednesdays you post this, Friday you post this. And then within that, you can get super creative and let your brain like use, you know, all these things that it pulls and get all this inspiration, but you're not like relying on inspiration alone. Let's see, question from Adrian. Knowing that video is the most effective when it comes to most content, are there any suggestions on video content that does not involve me looking at the camera right now? Great question. And so I would also really question knowing that video is the most effective when it comes to most content. I wouldn't say that's like the hard and fast rule. I really think it depends on your audience. I think it depends on the platform. I am a busy mom. I'm not going to sit there and like consume people's videos. Like I would rather look at like a carousel post. Like I consume those way more than a video because I can do it faster. I can get the bullet points that I need, and then I can decide if I want to read on and do the post. Definitely like depending on your audience and who's consuming it and the platform. Like, you know, I love to go live every week with these long videos because it is a chance for people to like be like, okay, I know that this is a longer video, I can allocate the time for this, but I wouldn't want all of my content to just be based on videos. Does that make sense? First, like with the just, it doesn't have to always be videos. Like Instagram is just like literally a minute long story. And then I also like have the regular content to back up with more detail because it's really hard to give someone everything they need in like a quick 1 minute story. So that's kind of like my first thought about video. But then like not involving you looking at the camera right now. So, definitely with reels, you know, I think there's so many amazing ways to do reels and not have your face there. Yes, relieves most of the pressure. Okay. Yeah. I think there's just like, there's no hard fast rule about video being it. I think it just depends on the platform, depends on your audience, who you're talking to. Building it into smaller chunks of more easily consumable content. So I think it's just part of your overall strategy. And just knowing that like I get a ton of replays on these live streams, but I don't get a ton of people here live just because it's hard to show up somewhere live. So just take that down on the back end and be like, I know people are still showing up and watching it. It just might not be at 12 at this time. And so kind of looking at the insights and the data you have within the social media platform to see kind of like what's getting bigger reach, what's kind of working better, what kind of outreach you're getting after things, and then involving you not having to look at the camera. Like there's definitely ways you can do that. And, you know, to lovingly nudge you here, Adrian, not to put you on the spot, but then there's also the questioning behind, you know, what's coming up around being on video. You know, obviously that's a bigger question than we can answer in this live stream, but like I always want my clients to do what feels good and aligned to them. And I also want to lovingly nudge them and ask the questions of what's coming up here, like what's feeling crunchy around that. Like I have a client that is very resistant to social media, just all across the board. And I'm like, okay, cool. I'm not going to like force you to do anything. I'm huge on content. Most of my clients use content. I do have clients who don't use it, and that's totally fine. But just when you kind of X off a whole, you know, platform or way of marketing or videos, if you just are a big hard no to it, I don't want you to not feel aligned doing something, but I also want to question what's coming up underneath that. And so with this client, when she was just a hard no to all social media, like a lot came up under that. And it's like, I'm not going to press her to go forward right now because she's not comfortable with it, but just like allowing the space to have that come up and process it is just so important. So again, like we're not going to go in and do a social media content strategy for her right now, but we are kind of digging into those other pieces of what's coming up around it. So yeah, that's important to know. The why it's uncomfortable, I get that. Exploring, yes, continue to explore it, because we're never fixed. Like there's always a new edge, there's always a new level, there's always a new layer. So once you get comfortable with one thing, then maybe it's something else. And so really letting yourself lean into that. Obviously my clients work with me so that they can have the space for that. They can have someone to support them through that. So they're not just like coming up with their own stories and self-limiting beliefs. And, a belief is something we just keep telling ourselves. And so it's a thought we have over and over. So our work is to create new thoughts and new beliefs, and like really kind of like, okay, we don't stay stuck with the same problem the whole time. We kind of move on, because there's always going to be a new problem. But, if you're growing, you keep having new problems, and you just kind of keep working through them, because like I said, we're never fixed. So let me know any thoughts around that come up for you, because I'm going to be here for that. And then if we're moving into organize, so the organized piece, we have the strategy. So pick your strategy, figure out where you're going to be, what you're talking about on certain days, all those kind of logistical things. And then the organized piece is like, okay, literally, what does that look like for you? So I told you I put a week's worth of posts in a Google Doc. I put about 2 repurposed posts in there. I put 2 sales posts every week. We usually rotate in a testimonial or a speaking to objections post. We were doing 2 sales posts a week on certain days, and we've kind of switched it just to tweak it and see, like, okay, hey, do these get bigger visibility when it's on these certain days versus these other days? And so also with the testimonials or speaking to objections, making sure that you're working those in. Let's see. Yes. Okay. Yeah, that was what I was talking about. Adrian says, right. And sometimes those beliefs are based on false evidence appearing real, aka fear. Yeah. Our brains are funny things. They like to keep us safe. They're not here to help us build wildly successful businesses. They literally want to keep us safe, procreate, all the basics. So they are always looking for fear. They're always looking for whatever it is to keep you safe. So if you literally don't feel safe getting on video, then you're not going to do it. And so really like questioning that. Where did that belief come from? Where did that story come from? Like, I work with my clients all the time on this. They bring something and I'm like, I literally have the back end of their business like at my fingertips. I can look at their QuickBooks. I can look at their Google Analytics 4 and I'm like, actually your numbers look really good. Like they're like, everything, the sky is falling. And it's like, your gross profit was like immensely up from this time last year. Like I can pull that. Oh, look, you think no one's going to your website? Well, look, we can see all the people going to your website. Now, if they're not taking the next action, that's the place for us to focus. But like, your content's working. People are going there. So that's where it's super handy that I love digging in the data and numbers, because I can literally be like, I know it feels like the sky's falling, but your numbers look really good. Or we can see the trajectory or the profit margins increasing. There's always the breadcrumbs that we can find, because our brain, like 3 to 1, will focus on the negative. So I am there to be a loving reminder to them of like what is actually going on in their business, even when it feels super, just triggering or not, like it's not working. Actually, since we're on that subject, Adrian, you're gonna make me on a little tangent here, but I was reading the book, The Happiness Advantage. Highly recommend, great book. And it talks about how our brains, they did studies, and like financial worries and fears trigger in our brain the same thing that was triggered with like a saber-toothed tiger. So our brain has like a visceral response to like when the 2008, all that financial just downpour crashed. Like our brains just literally respond like there was a tiger chasing us, but it has to do with money. And so just seeing that like we can have such a strong reaction and we can have such a strong fear, and it doesn't really need to be based on anything. Like it's not a saber-toothed tiger coming after us. It's still a very real fear and it's still a very real worry, but it doesn't have to have that hold and power and force that like a saber-toothed tiger standing next to us would cause. So I just thought that was super interesting, because like when that fear and pain gets kicked up, like we could just be like, okay, brain, I know you're keeping me safe. I really appreciate that, and I am safe, and this is what's really happening, or what I'm choosing to focus on. So all that to say, where was I? we're in the organization piece. So I've got the testimonials batch together. I have speaking to objections batch together. So I think it's just great when you're in your business, you're talking to your clients. Obviously, having a process for collecting testimonials is huge. And you want a process for sharing those. Having a process for like kind of just creating and collecting objections, because everyone is going to have objections. No business owner ever has an audience that doesn't have objections, and it's typically time or money. And so just hearing the words from your potential customers or people you work with that did go over the fence to work with you, like what was it? Like listen to their words, hear them, and just literally put those in like a speaking to objections document. And those are posts that you work into your content, because I could do a whole live stream about this, but like just because you're not speaking to objections doesn't mean that people don't have them. So really just putting it out there and just being like, dang, she was in my head. How did she know I was thinking that? Like really having that content there for them, because that's what helps them feel seen and heard and feel safe talking to you and buying from you. So that's what we do. We have, I also have like whatever I'm selling. I'm typically selling my free, 10K content strategy audit. Every other month we do a masterclass. So when that's coming up, like you'll see in a couple weeks, like around the 15th, mid-month, I'll, promo that for 2 weeks. And anything I'm selling, like if I'm selling a freebie, having all those batches of content together with the graphics and the links to the graphics, like it's just all kind of in this little box with a bow on the top. Let's see, question, is there a software or app that could help with content strategy planning that you recommend? Adrienne, what I've seen, obviously we do Google Docs. I've mentioned people use Airtable. I've heard of Dropbox. I haven't heard of any one system that people are like, this is amazing, it makes it so easy. Like, it's just kind of like you pick what you can tolerate kind of thing. Like for me, Google Docs is it. It is clunky, but like that's how I work. So I don't know any other softwares off the top of my head other than Google Docs, Dropbox, Airtable. I'm sure there's other ones out there. Planning, in terms of planning, I just use a simple spreadsheet. Like there's probably, y'all know I'm not hating, but all those template strategies. Like I know Jasmine Star sold one, and like you're literally buying like canned content, and like so there is that kind of planning that people will give you. Like I don't recommend that. I don't think that speaks to your people. I just think people know that it's canned. People can like smell that a mile away. But if you're talking about planning, like you could do a simple spreadsheet of like, on these days I post this, and then it's literally like broken down. Like, okay, maybe it's a reel on these days. Maybe it's a graphic or a carousel on these days. Like I just love spreadsheets for everything. So like for my brain, that makes it work easier. If I think of another one, I know a client that used something else, boards maybe. I think she called it boards. I looked into it. It wasn't right for me, but she likes it. What else have I heard of people use kind of like these visual things with like tiles? I don't remember what it's called. But it's kind of just like, just check around and see. I know there's different stuff, but it kind of just depends on you. Google Docs for me, like you pay for the storage, but it's free. So does that kind of answer your question? And then there's also like scheduling softwares. Like, I don't know. I think my social media manager uses Meta, just like the Facebook, Instagram scheduling thing. But in terms of scheduling, I think there are different things out there. It's just ease of use, cost, all that stuff. Like I can't speak to any of that stuff. But yeah, like when we're talking about organizing it, like, okay, yeah, people recommend Notion, but that was an overlad for me. Google Docs is my thing of everything else. Yeah. And I think it's like, if you use Google Docs for everything else, just literally come up with your system where you're like, okay, this is my year. Maybe I batch it by month. Maybe I batch it by week, like however you want to do it. Just like feel what works for your brain and full permission to just try something. And then you're like, actually, I don't like it that way. I'm going to try it this way. Like, obviously we want to pick something and stick to it, but we can tweak along the way with what works for you. So yeah, once you have those like batches of content, and I know Adrienne, you're with me on like a batch of sales posts, like having all that together. Let me close the door because I think the dog's gonna bark in a minute because my husband's coming home. But then you can literally take it from your Word document and copy and paste it into the scheduler or your spreadsheet or whatever if you're just gonna live post it, like you can just have it there to copy and paste and use. So, then put the date that you last used it so that like when it was last posted, where it was last posted. So you have like, all that to kind of rotate through and see when you last use it. Like speaking to objections, like, okay, I posted this one in my, Facebook group on this date. I sent this one out in my newsletter on this date. Like just have that, trail for yourself so that like, because we're not going to remember when we posted something. So just make it easy on yourself. So the last piece is implementing. So actually doing all of this, start slow. Maybe just figure out like, I'm going to do 2 posts a week. I'm going to do a value post. I'm going to do a sales post. Like however frequently or infrequently you do it, just do it. Just start, with something little, and just start that process. Like it's easier to start the process like when you're just starting up rather than like be 6 months into it and then you're like, oh snap, I've got all this content on Instagram and now I need to go copy and paste it from there and put it into my inventory here. So really thinking about like how can you just kind of build that as you go along so that it's just super easy for you. And obviously if you're going to work with a VA or an OBM later on, we can't like come up with every single thing that they're going to need or want. But if we've got a process that works for us, then it's pretty easy to kind of hand that off to someone else. So yeah, eventually your content will work for you, and you'll be full serving clients. So this is just to have a process that you can hand over your VA. It's kind of always that thing where we're trading time or money. So in the beginning, when you're not as full, maybe you are using more of your time to do this. That was definitely what I did. I was posting all my stories. I was posting all my content. And then later it's like, okay, when you start to see the content work and you're getting more clients and you're getting more full, that's when it's like, okay, now we bring on a team member to kind of take all of this over, because at a certain point, like, yeah, your gross margin might go down a little bit because you're paying someone, but you're going to exponentially grow because you are able to take on more clients, and that's what makes money in your business. So Adrienne said, understood. Okay, good. Let me know if you have any other questions about any of that. And that's something working behind the scenes with people that I see often. It happened in my business. I love to be totally transparent about that. Like I got a team. I hired a coach. I hired a bookkeeper. I hired an OBM, VA. My gross profit margins like went down. I was used to being the only person in my business as a service provider with like 80% profit margins, and it decreased and went down. But my revenue has like doubled since getting support. My gross profit margins are increasing. Like you kind of have to hit that tipping point. It is painful, and a lot of people I feel like don't talk about it when you're like, oh, like I'm so used to taking home like 80% of my revenue, and now I've got a team to pay, and so that revenue goes down. But like that's what's helping you build more revenue, because at a certain point, like you're stuck. So when it was just me and my business, at a certain point, like I'm capped. Like I could only make so much every month because I literally can't do any more than I was doing. And so, paying for support and building a team and getting my own support was like the best money ever spent. And it helps me be able to serve more people because I'm not having to go post right now into like my Instagram, and I don't have to upload every story. Like I'm definitely still in my stories and I'm still posting, but it gets to be when it's fun and when it feels good and when I've got a pocket of time and I can just do that. And otherwise it's a well-oiled machine. I'm creating everything, but someone is literally putting it for me. Like I'm not having to edit everything in Active Campaign to get my newsletter out every week. Like I've got the content, the VA schedules it, makes it look good, all that stuff. So this is like my call to like, have that mindset. It's like growth mindset kind of takes a dip sometimes in profit margins, but that's when like the work I do with my clients is so beneficial because I can literally look at the numbers with them and we can see like, okay, we're gaining traction. Yes, we took a dip, but like, let's lean into what's working. Let's see what's getting the clients, and just having that like support to like normalize that. Yes, it goes down. And then to also see that growth. I think that's the only thing about that. And yes, hire someone to support you when you have a process pretty much in place. And if you're like, you've already like hired someone and it's messy, and sometimes we have a messy middle, but genuinely from, the get-go, like it's nice to have a process. And something else I'll say about that is with bookkeeping, when it was just me, I had a very clear process. I tracked everything to spreadsheet. It was very clear and easy. Then when I hired a bookkeeper, it was just wildly not sufficient. So we did kind of have a messy middle because we had to get a platform. We got teamwork so we can track the task and everybody can know where any project is at any time. We've got messages in there. So we all have our eyes and access to the messages, to the files, all in one place. So that's one of those things where I had the system before I had support, but once I got support, it still needed to be tweaked because it just wasn't sustainable to have everybody do it the way I was doing it. So obviously it's like, we can have the system, but it still might need to be tweaked. So let me know if you have any other questions, any other thoughts. Those are kind of my 3 main content strategies I want you to steal for my 5-figure a month business. Was really think of your content as your inventory. Be sure to reuse and repurpose your content. Feel really good about it. Have a plan for it. And then create a weekly framework and schedule to follow. And be super simple. None of this has to be super overcomplicated. Start small and then stack from there. We want you to get really good at one thing before you stack something else. That's something I'm always talking about, working on with clients, with business owners. They're like, oh, and I can do this and this and this and this and this. And I'm like, oh, we kind of pick this as our focus right now. So we'll put that on deck. We'll write it down when it feels like the right time. Then we can stack it on that. I'm not being a killjoy. I just want to make sure they have a North Star and that we're kind of always moving towards that, because that is what I see slow growth so much, is when people are trying 50 different strategies or jumping this and jumping on that. Oh, but this platform's a thing, so I'm going to, go there. And it's just we don't have to be on all the places on all the time. We can really see what works for us and stay there and just build a ton of momentum. So I hope that's been super helpful for y'all. If you're okay, great, I've got these 3 content things, these strategies you talked about, but I'm still feeling confused about what to speak about. I'm confused why my content isn't working. Why isn't it converting? All those things. We offer these 10K content strategy audits. They are free coaching calls, one-to-one support. This is not a template that is just me, taking something from somebody else and slapping it on your business. We can pull up your Instagram post, we can pull up your content, we can really dive into literally what are you doing, what's working, what's the gap to close, what's the problem to solve. This is free support because I just love what I do. I love coaching people. I love being on calls and talking to business owners. I love it as much as the business owner gets out of it. I've gotten teary-eyed on these calls before because people have given me such amazing feedback. It just feels so good. So I'm going to drop the link below. Feel free, grab one of these calls. I am getting full. We only have a couple one-to-one spots left. But in between, I like to, book in my week with these free calls just as long as I can. So be sure to grab those because those are pretty limited now that we are pretty full. So that's it for this week. I'll be back next week. Adrian says, thank you, Jordan. That was helpful and understandable. Got to run. Looking forward to speaking to you. Yes, thank you, Adrian. Thank you so much for joining. And everyone joining live, catching the replay. Throw your questions, throw your comments at me because I can't wait to support you with those. And again, we'll see you next week. Have a good day.